My name is Nicholas Wyatt, and I'm a founding member of Cubit Gallery and Studios in London. I come from a working class background in Kent and left school at the age of 16. I was given a provisional place at art school, which was held over for a year, and in the intervening year I went to work for a firm of defence solicitors in the West End of London. And during that year, I became, for want of a better word, seduced by the glamour of West End crime in the early 1970s. So I would be going on a daily basis to either courts or prisons, sometimes police stations, working in law offices with solicitors and barristers. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I actually finally made the decision to go to art school. I went to the Central School of Art, which was then in Southampton Row in London, and spent 3 years doing my undergraduate degree there. There was some amazing tutors there, people like David Horton, the British sculptor William Turnbull, and the British artist Cecil Collins, all of whom had quite a strong influence on my later work. I left art school, and with a group of other friends from art school, we formed a set of studios in the East End of London. And during the succeeding 3 or 4, 5 years, I probably changed studios in various locations in London, probably about every 2 years. It wasn't until 1990 that I formed, with a group of about 20 other artists, what was to become Cubit Artists Gallery and Studios, which was originally in Goods Way in London. Because I worked before art school and have worked sort of outside of the art world, I think that has given me kind of a broader sense of what I want my art to be about, rather than it being purely limited to an aesthetic response. I think there's always been an element of social and cultural awareness in my work, and I think this is also echoed in the fact that I was part of a group of artists who formed a artist collective that came to be known as Cubit, and it's the underlying feeling of a collectivity and a place that artists have in society that's not just restricted to their market value or their ability to produce high-end luxury brand goods, which I don't think is particularly helpful or healthy for a society. As to the effect or influence my background may or may not have had on my work, I don't think it's possible to draw any direct causal links. I know that for a large part of my working career as an artist, I have always been rather wary of art just being about aesthetics. I made abstract paintings, monochrome, colour-filled paintings, but the type of abstraction I was making related more to the theological wing of abstraction, and that really, I think, was about ideas of presence, the presence of the artwork and the presence of the individual standing in front of the artwork. And it is through that idea of a sense of the individual and the kind of presence that an artwork brings to an individual's experience that really caused me to think about the limitations, as I saw it then, of abstract art, which, speaking very broadly, deals in a generalized experience. And so when I was in my 40s, I became very interested in the effect that certain types of iconography can have on the presence of the viewer. And I became very interested in religious iconography from painters like El Greco, Caravaggio, and the affective aesthetics that their work operates with in relation to the viewer. And I actually did doctoral research about this using my painting practice as an experimental tool. And so the paintings that I've made since then have really been concerned about the effect or the influence of the artwork on the viewer, on the beholder. And in this respect, I suppose my biggest influence has been, apart from the artists I've just cited, but in terms of a more modern influence, the paintings of Mark Rothko, and that idea of an immersive experience that Rothko's art, in my view, gives people. The current body of work that I'm making focuses on this idea of presence, but a narrative of presence that both the iconography and the painting gives the viewer, and also the viewer's experience in front of the painting. And so this idea of presence works in a two-way direction. It's rather like, I suppose the best way I can describe it is, I guess I'm trying to make secular altarpieces. That's to say that the paintings have the presence of what was formerly described as religious art, but retains a lot of the power of those images, but communicated through a mixture of both historical and contemporary imagery from such sources as fashion photography and cinematic imagery, which like overlays or qualifies certain religious devotional imagery. And I'm making a series of fairly largish paintings of saints. There are many challenges that face artists, and specifically nowadays, younger artists face a lot of economic challenges, but broadly speaking, I would say perhaps one of the biggest challenges an artist faces is to maintain a sense of belief in your own work and more importantly in the value of your own work, when, as very often happens, the broader society after art school will probably receive what you do with either indifference or in some cases hostility, and it's maintaining a sense of confidence, resolution, integrity and sense of purpose with your own work, even in the absence of validation in the conventional sense by the art world. I suppose if I was going to give any advice to my younger self, it would be that being a professional artist is more than just having a lot of technical skill and producing lots of work. There is also the contextual element involved of how you bring that work to the attention of a wider public, and that is a very complex area of activity for artists. I personally think this generation are much better at it than the generation I was in, where at art school our head was just filled with aesthetics and very scant attention was paid to the idea of how you contextualize and promote your practice. But I maintain a kind of value, I think, that I think still is important nowadays, and that is that art is a vocation and not a career. Whereas a lot of practice these days seems to be purely limited to the idea that art is a career, much like working in a bank or being a solicitor or a lawyer. It's not, and it can't really function like that. In terms of unusual mediums, a lot of the abstract work I made and some of the earlier figurative paintings were made using the medium of microcrystalline wax, where the wax is either mixed with pigment or it's poured clear onto a panel. My practice in more recent years, though, has been in using the traditional medium of oil paint on canvas, simply because I found it practically the most sensible and easiest way of finding a medium that said what I wanted it to say. I don't nowadays listen to music, although when I was making the abstract paintings I would quite regularly have music on in the background or on headphones, but with the current body of figurative paintings that I've been making, I tend to prefer silence. The best reaction that someone has had about my work, I suppose it's not really, I mean, I've had professional good reactions about my work and they're fine and dandy, very nice. But there was just from a member of the public once who saw a particular painting of mine, and I could tell by what she said and the body language that the work had really communicated, and that's really all you want, or rather that is the most important reaction, I think, that you've actually created something that communicates on a visual level to somebody else. And I would like to think that if people can at least take away from my artwork some form of insight or emotion or feeling that the artwork has generated in them, then that would make me very happy, and I would consider that that a successful form of communication. I have an upcoming exhibition at Cubit called Cubit Invites in June 2025, and my social media handle is Nicholas Wyatt _artist.